The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So, while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Meemaw and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Hello, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome to bout number 162 of Cinesmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, writer, actor, and director Kyle. I think my body's getting used to these 36-hour days fine.
If protein buildup is a sign of time travel, I need to speak to my urologist.
Second, filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short Productions, Gabriel. Let's have a drink. Rowald.
What day is it?
It's yesterday, Gabe.
Oh, that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm. Third, filmmaker and owner of Arizona Inc. Studios, Andrew. We know everything, okay? We're prescient. Zumwalt.
This all started tonight. And if there are a million different realities, I have slept with your wife in every one of them.
Fourth, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom. That's weird. It's you calling me Haggis.
This is actually the fifth time we've recorded this show, and the stack of Toms laying next to me here is getting smelly. So can we try and get it right this time?
I noticed a lot of flies. I wasn't going to say anything, but...
Well, I mean, those are always there.
Have any of them been good? Have any of the shows been good?
No,
okay.
we never make it out of the acting category.
Okay, that's great. So we're on point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, let's poke the monkey.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tech Bro, Time Travelers, and Decohere dinner guests, welcome to the main event. Tonight, we're trekking through timelines as two tales of temporal trouble tussle it out to see who is triumphant. In the first quarter, from 2013, written by James Ward Bierkind and Alex Manoogian, directed by James Ward Bierkind, starring Nicholas Brendan, Maury Sterling, and Emily Baldoni. Coherence. In the second quarter, from 2004, written and directed by Shane Carruth, starring Casey Gooden, David Sullivan, and Shane Carruth. Primer!
it was so good to pull off my dusty DVD of Primer that I bought at Hollywood Videos so many years ago. And thankfully I let Tom borrow it, and I'm like,
Yep.
Has it been this long ago that I bought this? Like an actual video rental store I bought the used DVD at. But man, Kyle told me about this movie years ago. I think it was around the time that it was out for rentals, and I just bought it, and it's been in my collection ever since. And Coherence was a very nice surprise for me. But enough about me. Let's talk about these movies and what you guys think. Let's move on to our first round, which is writing.
Oh, wait, is that me? I can't remember from yesterday or tomorrow if I'm supposed to
Jesus
start
Christ,
this.
man. We haven't even started writing. It's getting off fast.
Oh, another dead Tom. Another dead
do
Tom
that
on my
every
conscience. Another dead Tom on my conscience. All right, writing.
Go back, start over.
Oh, yeah. We already
Don't you
did.
fucking dare.
Oh my
We already did. If we're talking, it hasn't gone well yet.
We're not gonna get through this.
All right. So let's talk about the writing of these films. Oh boy. I always describe Primer to people. Yes, Mike, and I remember recommending this to you. I had like a 10 or 12 year period of my life where I was watching every indie film I could get my hands on, starting in like 94 at Clerks and going until like Primer. And I always describe it to people as the movie where two guys accidentally invent time travel. And I still think that holds up as a good explanation. The writing of it is, I don't know how to describe it. It's a movie that is, some people have described as impenetrable. And it's like a movie that is so incredibly hard to figure out. And part of that is the way it's told. But I think a lot of that comes from the writing and the structure that the writer/director wanted, which was basically to throw you in a situation where you're as confused as these guys are for a while. And it's a very oddly written. It's very show don't tell, which I appreciate usually in a movie. Sometimes a movie needs a little more tell if it's going to be super hard to figure out. I've seen Primer probably 7 or 8 times, and I get the gist of it. But if you asked me how many Abes there are, how many Aarons there are, I would have trouble. I would have to get a notebook and watch the movie again. Also, a lot of the surrounding things that they choose to fill the movie in with, like the birthday party, okay, let's put it this way. Primer is not a movie full of exciting twists and turns. There are a few times that there is a little bit of conflict. A lot of it is watching people sit in a room and trade stocks. So if that's what you're into, okay. But yeah, it's written very simply and written from a very scientifically dense point of view. The dialogue, I don't know, is okay. I guess maybe some of that is partly to do with the delivery when we get to the acting category, but it's a clever film, but it may be too clever for its own good to be a well-written film, where it may not do enough to engage the audience. And just like you don't want to know you're watching a film, you also don't want to feel like you're a complete idiot watching a movie and you can't figure out anything that's going on. And I would think for some people, Primer would reach that level. So that's a fine line. Coherence is an incredibly clever idea. And I think it has a lot of props and tropes that it hangs its story structure on that help it out immensely, such as the glow sticks and the totems and the numbers and all these things. I mean, these are all contrivances by the writer to show what he wants to show in the movie, but it does get a little too much tell don't show. I think the roulette conversation is too on the nose. They have a conversation about basically walking onto a roulette wheel and not knowing where you're going to end up. But I like that the movie has a protagonist you follow even through all these crazy things. Like M is clearly the character you're the most focused on, even though there are other big personalities. I think the characters are very one note and tropey. You know, you have hippy dippy woman and she never acts outside of that. You have a struggling former alcoholic actor and he never breaks out of that role. You have Minxie, kind of skanky ex-girlfriend. She never gets out of that role. But there are some very clever twists, like at the beginning when Amir and Laurie show up. Later on in rewatching, you realize that those are different Amirs and Lauries because they're confused about the actor who was in a show that they watched, and someone thinks they did yoga, but they never have. So it's a very clever idea, and it has some very clever conceits to it. The dialogue is pretty messy at points. People talking over each other a lot. I don't know how much of the movie was scripted that way or improvised. I don't know anything about that, but messy, clever, but messy.
I would say though that a lot of that dialogue that is over the top of each other and the messy part of it, I think adds to what I would call realism to the situation. I mean, when you're all with a group of friends and you're all sitting around, nobody's like, you say your line, you say your line. Like everybody's just kind of randomly talking. It's all kind of over the top of itself. And to your point, I don't know if that was planned and if it was specifically set up that way or if it was just more of a, you guys go with it and we'll see what happens. And there was some talking, but make sure you hit this point. So that part of it, I guess I look at the messy as realistic lifeness. I would agree with, your twists and stuff. You're never really sure. Well, you don't actually make the realization if you're watching it for the first time until the very end. You make that realization of, oh, there's all of these people don't necessarily belong here, even though you thought you've been watching a house where everyone except for only two didn't belong there. But then you realize all of them are a mismatch of everyone, and there's only a pair that actually belong in the actual house that you're watching. And I think that is an amazing, I don't know if you'd call it a twist, but that realization that you're like, oh, because then they start naming off like 5 different totems, which I thought that was a kind of a, you're like, whoa, I thought that was kind of cool. Primer it was difficult to watch. The first time I watched it, I understood what was going on. I could follow the story. And then I really started trying to like figure out what I just watched. So I had to watch it more than once to actually start really following it, because like you said, I don't really know how many Abes there are and which one are we actually watching and which one actually poisoned the other one. And like when you go back and you start watching it again, you start trying to follow some of that, because the first time you're just like completely lost. The one, I would say the one big thing I didn't really like about it was the narration over the top of it, like it was a phone call or a recording. I don't think it added much, and I think it made some of it more confusing. I think I know what they were going for, but I didn't feel like it was necessary. But that's my take.
I think the narration kind of was like kind of held your hand through some of the trickier parts. It was almost like just this touch tone that would, you really have to throw out the unreliable narrator and just have to assume that that you can trust this person's describing this to you. But I think I don't normally like narration, but in this instance, I was okay with it. Both these stories, I think, really push the envelope in terms of how complicated you can make a movie and still have it be entertaining. I thought, I don't know, it's tough because I'd seen Primer before. In fact, I think it's been recommended at least twice in the last 13 years on our show. And then Coherence, I kind of had on kind of like while I was like doing some work, and then I wasn't getting it all. So I had to like stop halfway through and then went back and started it again. Both of those things helped me enjoy the movie a lot more. Having a basis and having an idea of like where it was going. So the second viewings of these movies is much more enjoyable, I think, than the first. And I think that's not good. I don't think a movie should be better the second time you watch it. I think if you can't deliver your story in a way in the first viewing, I mean, you can get more out of it and get more in depth and stuff. But if you're losing people on the first watch, and you're asking your audience to watch your movie twice, then it's too complicated. So, I don't know. So I guess, I mean, I enjoy both of these movies, and I thought they were fun. I remember being frustrated with Primer the first time, and then that first time through with Coherence, I was enjoying it pretty well and following it along well enough. I think the dialogue in both movies are. I mean, kudos to Primer. There's a lot of scientific knowledge that they don't dumb down, and I thought that was beneficial and kind of gave it some gravitas. Coherence did that a little bit more, but you were looking at it through the eyes of people who didn't have that scientific background. The characters didn't, unlike the guys in Primer. So they were able, they would have to repeat it and kind of, simplify it a little bit for the people in the room, which, is obviously for us. So bonus points for that as well.
Yeah, I feel like, personally for Coherence, I feel like there's a few things that are a little too convenient. The glow sticks, they didn't make any sense to me. Why do they have glow sticks? And it's only a device for us to know, which version of each of these characters we're looking at. And I felt like that was a little too convenient. I mean, have you ever brought glow sticks to a party? Be honest.
I thought they were at the house. Somebody brought them.
I've never been to a rave though, so I'm the wrong guy.
I mean,
right.
I
just
have
felt like that was a little bit
sticks, but
and I think if we didn't know, if we didn't have the glow sticks and we didn't know which version of each of these people they were, that's a little bit. That's a little more unsettling. It's kind of like, how do we know? How can we tell which version of this person it is? I felt like the glow sticks were a little too convenient. I did not I did not enjoy the improvised overlapping dialogue. A lot of the dialogue got lost, and a lot of it didn't really seem to move the story forward necessarily. I mean, I assume they had kind of like checkpoints where it's like, okay, well, we need to talk about these things in this scene so we can move the story forward. But otherwise, improvise, and it felt a little bit too much like a community theater kind of thing. And I really did not enjoy the overlapping dialogue kind of thing in Coherence. I don't really think it served the story all that much. I get that it gives you this kind of. It did have this kind of cinema verite kind of reality kind of feel to it, but I just didn't like it. It was too much, and I don't feel like it served the story that much. I liked the dialogue in Primer a little bit better. It was kind of scientific over your head, but that's what you expect if someone is kind of developing a time machine, or at least accidentally. Who knows what they're creating? We don't know what they're trying to create when they do it. But it felt more realistic. I don't know if we were recording yet or not, but Mike Keeler said something about having, Neil deGrasse Tyson on or whatever. He would probably say that, well, that dialogue is bullshit. That doesn't make any sense. But I felt like in the context of the film that it was a little bit, it made more sense. Like they were actually trying to do something scientific. Although, both of these films get, and I don't know how you avoid this in a time travel film, or I guess really Coherence isn't really about time travel. It's kind of a more of a multiverse, kind of multi-identity kind of thing. But I don't know how you avoid it getting overly complicated really fast. And it's really, I think it would be really hard to make, well, forgive the pun, a coherent story about those kinds of things that people can understand the first time through or second time through. I've seen Primer twice now, and I'm still not entirely sure what was happening at the end. A lot of it I kind of got. I got the idea, but I don't know. I think they're complicated ideas that are overall well executed, but I really didn't enjoy the dialogue or some of the devices in Coherence.
I mean, there have been time travel movies that are very simplistic, I would say.
Well, one of my favorites that I've seen so far was probably It's About Time, or what, the one we watched.
That's the one.
About Time.
That's the one I was thinking of too.
One of my least favorites is the one that we pitted it against, is The Time Traveler's Wife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it has the potential of having a really great concept of like, what if you were married to a guy who traveled through time, and how messy would that get? But that one, the story got weird and creepy really fast. So, but I think About Time is one of my favorite ones. And one of the things that I think I like about it is that they don't spend too much time working on the science of it, or why can this family, why can the men in this family go in a closet and travel through time? Who knows? I don't know. But we didn't need to know, because that wasn't important to the storytelling. But I think a lot of these kind of focus on explaining time travel. Primer definitely tries to get into at least some scientific sounding dialogue to explain it. And Coherence, they try to explain it as some supernatural phenomenon, because there's a comet going overhead or whatever.
Well, not entirely. I mean, the comet is just actually breaking down. It's the the belief in the theory behind the multiverse. Well, maybe this is why I wanted to do overall the belief behind the multiverse, and for every single choice that you make, branching off into a different timeline is actually a real theory, and the whole point of Coherence is that they're basically breaking a hole in the space-time continuum. It wasn't that the comet was the precursor that created that break. It wasn't
right. Well, the
created
comet obviously. I mean, there's no reason to have the comet in there unless it's like kind of the.
It was the catalyst,
progenitor of the situation. I mean,
it's the catalyst of. The
we have to
the
assume that for some reason something about the comet itself is causing, these multiverses to get close together and create this dark space that they have to cross and all that kind of stuff. But
I was even thinking of simpler stuff like Back to the Future. Like it's super simple.
Yeah.
Time travel.
Okay.
Done.
That'd have to be up there too. Back to the Future is that's a classic time travel movie, and it's it's the kind of thing that's accessible and entertaining to everyone. I don't know about the science of the time travel and the those kinds of things, but it's a very accessible, very entertaining time travel story. Yeah. What's that?
It was the flux capacitor.
Well, yeah, and a DeLorean for whatever reason.
Because they were cool looking.
They were cool looking. That's for sure.
I do think the mechanism that they used in Primer by having Abe go like first through the process off camera, and then explain it to Aaron as he goes through it, was a really clever way of handling it. So that we're not struggling to kind of follow him through the first time to figure out what's going on. Because so much of what's happening is like stuff that he's feeling and stuff that he's thinking, and it'd be very hard to deliver that. But the way they were able to, it's like, all right, so Abe went through, and now he's going to explain to Aaron what that process is like and what it feels like and what he can expect. So that when Aaron goes through, and it was, and just the way they crafted that and was able to deliver the process to us as an audience was really well done, I thought.
Yeah.
All right.
I also didn't like the end of Coherence.
Let's put it to a vote, boys. I let you go a little over.
You didn't let us.
little?
We took it. We took
Kyle.
Oh, wait, I have to go first?
Yep.
What did I vote for last time?
I don't know.
You voted
It
3
resets
times for
every time.
Coherence and twice for Primera. Primera.
Primera?
Primera.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to vote
Is
for
that like a
Primera.
sauce?
It's a printer. It's a printer that I'm selling.
I'm going to give it to Primer for the attempt.
Okay. Tom.
Yeah, I'm going to Primer.
Andrew.
I'm going with Coherence.
Okay. And Gabe.
This time around, I'm going to go with Primer.
Okie dokie. By the way, Gabe, the best time travel movie ever made is Hot Tub Time Machine. When shooting Coherence...
I frankly have not seen all of it. So
Neither have I.
You haven't? Oh.
No. When shooting Coherence, instead of scripts, the actors would each receive only a small paragraph that only they would see as their goals for the day. This allowed for the story to unfold naturally and create genuine reactions in the other actors. One of the pivotal moments in Primer is when a character named Granger suddenly appears, having traveled back in time. Why Granger went back in time and was following Abe and Aaron is never explained in the movie. And Carruth has admitted he's not entirely sure himself.
Can I change my vote?
There's
Never
two
mind.
hot
I'll do it
tub
next time
time
around.
machines.
What?
There are 2 hot tub
Yeah, the
time
next
machines.
recording. you
Yes,
can
there
change
are.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our second round, which is acting.
All right. So one of the cool things about these two movies, and I don't know if you guys feel this, but one of the cool things about watching two movies like this is that kind of in the same way the 48-hour film project does, but it makes filmmaking feel really accessible. Like watching both these movies, I feel like I could make a movie like this. They're so smart with the use of location, and the lighting. If you have a really good script and you have the technical aspects that you can manage, and both of these movies do that really well. The time machines aren't really glitzy or anything like that. They're able to they were able to make them out of Home Depot. Coherence does the really smart choice of having everything pretty much take place in this house, like one location that they could just hunker down for 3 weeks and shoot this movie together, which I thought was genius. But we're this acting category, and one of the hardest parts about these low budget films that you can't really buy your way out of is acting. I just when people say that acting is acting is easy, and what Brad Pitt and I can't think of anybody else. Emma Stone, what good actors do, it's not that hard. It really isn't. But these movies, which are full of these, professional actors, they're on a different level. And acting is a skill, and it needs to be developed. And I see it a lot of times, again, with the 48-hour film project, where finding good actors is really, really hard. And for me, I think Coherence would be a much better movie with better actors. And I think there's some acting in Primer that could use a little bump up as well. Emily Baldoni, I thought in Coherence was probably the best actor in the entire cast. She did a really great job of keeping everything kind of low key. Other actors just kind of seemed to chew the scenery a little bit, and they just seemed to like try a little too hard to try and like elevate their acting to the scope that the movie was, and it kind of became like ultra realistic, like just over dramatic. The beginning when the lights start going off and people's phones stop working, like people are like freaking the fuck out over this stuff, and I'm just like, this stuff happens. Lights go out. Everybody calm down. Like I don't know why all 8 people in that party just absolutely go nuts. And I don't know, maybe that's a directing issue, but I thought that just the acting was just a bit over the top. Shane Carruth and David Sullivan, the 2 guys in Primer, I thought they handled it much better, but they still are just, it just doesn't have that believability that a really great actors can get you. One of the things that works better for them is they do keep everything pretty understated and low key. Obviously, they're running a covert time travel operation, so they have to. But I thought that they did the better job than the guys over in Coherence.
Yeah, I think what's funny about acting is good acting requires the ability to be very understated at times, and also the ability to heighten very effectively and believably at times. And these movies are missing those aspects that better actors would bring to it, because the heightening generally feels very artificial sometimes, just because I think the quality of the acting is lower than average. I think Primer hides it better because I don't know if it's you have an easier time believing these people are not actors because they, semi-believably come off as tech bros. And so you're not expecting much out of them that way. But when you have a bottle episode, basically, where you put 8 people in a house, there has to be some nuance. And I feel like people are they're either going at 1 or they're going at 10 a lot. And a lot of the decisions about how they express their emotions, and maybe we can get more into this in directing, are not well thought out or crafted sometimes. There are some genuinely good moments. There are some very knowing looks and telling looks that you catch just briefly as the audience. And part of that is directing too, is to insert those and get your mind flowing a little bit there. But yeah, the acting is very uneven in Coherence, and I think generally would be considered, in my opinion, like below par. But it is also a very cheap independent film, so you have to give it some slack for that, because, as you mentioned, good acting generally costs money unless you find like a diamond in the rough. Not that there aren't a lot of good actors out there, but Primer, I think, gets a little bit of an easier time because of its subject matter and because of who the characters are supposed to be. They're not a group of friends at a dinner party with lots of overlapping interactions. They're basically 2 guys who are talking about one singular thing for most of the movie. But even then, yeah, some of it comes off as very unbelievable, and their ability to do anything physical is very limited. Their physical acting is very poor. They can deliver the lines and make you believe some of it, and they can make you believe like they're confused by things or they're figuring things out. They're pretty good at that part. But when they're forced to be physical in their acting and are dealing with a tense situation or struggling, or they are playing basketball, or when someone's fainting, I found that to be generally where the cracks really started to show.
All I can think about is them standing at the barbecue having the conversation, and he's like, one guy's cooking, the next guy is like standing next to him overlooking the cooking, the other guy has one cigarette and is every once in a while trying to smoke it, and then the other dude next to him standing there with the beer can, and they're just having this just dark conversation. Like it's just a weird scene when it comes to acting. Yeah, I mean, both of these films, I think Tom said it the best. Like, this just shows you that if you have a group of friends, it doesn't matter what the equipment is, because I would say that Primer is quite a bit lower quality than Coherence, but it didn't matter because the techniques and the story that they were telling with the people that they had worked and could have been made in, well, maybe not 48 hours, but made in a very short amount of time with a very low budget. And it shows, but it still was entertaining. And I think that goes to more than just, what we'll talk about in directing and stuff, but you have people that sometimes can hit their notes. Sometimes they hit their character. Sometimes they're right on and it makes the story that you're believable. I would agree that, in both characters in Primer, was Shane Carruth's Aaron character. I mean, he was an asshole. Like, it was really obvious at the very beginning he was going to take this too far, and that came across. They showed that character. So was it adequate enough to tell the story? Yes. Is it going to get them an Oscar? No, because you're right. It's a skill. The Coherence is pretty much in the same thing. You have a bunch of people that they can kind of act. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's also not like, whoo, that was amazing. M is, I think the only reason she sticks out maybe is purely because she's the main character. But, she has some chops. She does a fine job. Does anybody want to talk about the Nicholas Brendan? Yeah, Nicholas Brendan. Let me look. Yep, I said that right. The guy that played Mike. Does he look like a discount Matthew Perry?
Yes.
Okay. Like a dented can version you'd buy cheap at the store.
The discount Matthew Perry. Okay, good. That was the first thing when I watched Coherence, I was like, that sure looks like Matthew Perry, but I don't think that's Matthew Perry. Yeah. So I'm like, yep, that's a discount Matthew Perry.
Yeah. Well, I think both of these films suffer a little bit from the, being low budget films. So you can't really spend a lot of money on talent, and you often probably recruit, friends and family to do a lot of this acting because you can't afford big names. You can't afford necessarily people who are professional actors. And I felt like a lot of Coherence, it felt to me a lot like a local improv troupe to me. Like these people are like they're halfway decent in a local acting troupe, but they're not A-listers by any means. And they did a an acceptable job, but I just don't feel like they were really all that great. And I don't think the acting in Primer was necessarily all that much better, but I think they benefited a little bit from what seemed to me to be a little bit more of a organized and calculated script, and so they didn't have to try to improv. They kind of knew what was coming, and they didn't have to make up dialogue along the way and that kind of thing. And I don't know that the acting really stands out in either of these films. And I don't know. I feel like it is a little bit more. My complaints with it have a little bit more to do with writing and directing than it does with the acting. I think the actors did the best they could with what they had, and the fact that probably none of them were really professional actors. Maybe one. There was one guy in Coherence who had maybe it was the low rent Matthew Perry. There's one guy in Coherence that I understand was known in other things, but I did feel like they just brought a local acting troupe together and just kind of said, okay, here's a story, go.
Well, I think, to some extent, that shows, I think, a little bit more in Primer. Your budget was $7,000 for Primer.
Well, I think one of the things that Primer did right, though, on a low budgeter, is they limited the cast.
Yeah.
There may have been too many people in Coherence. There may have been too many characters to develop in that kind of thing in Coherence. So maybe one thing that Primer did was really limit their cast. I think their cast is literally like 7 people or something. It's like
2 people.
It's very few
people.
Extras. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very limited cast. And that may have actually been a good choice. But I don't think any of them were really actors. You know what I mean? They were like, okay, we're the filmmakers. We need somebody to be in it. I'll do it. That kind of thing. Yeah, I like their performances better, but again, I think those may have been choices, writing and directing choices, as opposed to acting chops. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't think. I don't think that Coherence did themselves any favor by going the improv route with these, the lineless script with the cast. You have to give them something to work with, and it's such a complicated story. I don't know. It feels like if you're going for that realism, and again, like goes that ultra real, it just seemed a bit too real. One of the fun things about Primer is that because Shane Carruth wrote it and directed it and starred in it, there is this kind of this meta thing happening where Shane has come up with this really great idea for a movie, and he's got to get his friends together and go through this entire process of putting a movie together, and it parallels the same thing with the time travel that's happening with them. Was actually happening when he put the movie together itself, and they have to do it on a shoestring budget and try and get through to so that it can be a success. And so I think that's one of the fun things I like about Primer is that it's you kind of get a sense of what it was probably like to make this movie with him being in all 3 positions like that.
Because we've all made that movie.
Yeah.
and
yeah.
It turns out in 48 hours, but we've all done it.
Yeah.
I think we can relate more.
That's true.
Is maybe part of that.
Yeah.
Because think of how many, well, we'll talk about this later actually, because this is acting cell.
All right, let's put it to a vote. Tom.
I will go Primer.
All right. Andrew.
I will go with Coherence.
All right. Gabe.
This time around, I'm going to go with Primer.
And Kyle.
Yeah, Primer for me.
Okie dokie. The actor who plays Amir in Coherence, Alex Manguian, we'll just call him Alex, is also the co-writer. He was essentially the mole who helped guide scenes if the actors went astray. Over 100 people auditioned for the parts of Abe and Aaron in Primer. David Sullivan was cast as Abe without professional acting experience, and director Shane Carruth cast himself as Aaron when he couldn't find the right person for the role.
Time will tell if that was a good choice.
Dun, dun, dun.
There we go.
Oh, rim job.
Been waiting for that.
Let's move on to our third round.
When's your birthday, Gabe? Gonna ask for it on your birthday.
Okay, so let's talk about Shane. Is it Caruth? Is that
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? I don't know.
I would say Caruth, but I don't know.
Okay.
Caruth?
It's Cruth. One
Cruth?
syllable. Cruth.
Cruth?
Yes.
Cruth.
Okay.
Shane Cruth.
I
would
found
not
it.
have said that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have either. I find it interesting of some of the stuff that he has directed. He's acted in quite a few things, a lot of shorts, a couple of TV series. He's composed music for both for Primer and then two other TV shows. One of them was The Girlfriend Experience, which I didn't realize that he had anything to do with, which I think is kind of interesting. But he has directed another movie and directed another TV series called Breakthrough, which I've never heard of that one before. So again, I guess this goes back to talking about a little bit of he's a competent director, and to direct and act in your film, if you haven't done it, it's not as easy as you think, because you're trying to direct, you're trying to set up your shot, you're trying to actually get everything where it needs to be, plus setting the scene, talking to their actors, getting everything all ready, and trying to get in character at the same time. And it's a lot. It's one of those skills that we were talking about, just to be a director and just to be an actor, and then to combine those two at the same time, it's a lot. So got to give him a little bit of kudos for that he took that on, even though he couldn't find someone to play his snarky kind of greedy jerk character. And so he did it himself, which, worked out just fine. It also kind of shows that when you have the technique, you don't need all the super expensive equipment and millions of dollars of cameras and lights. And he did a really good job of building the story and building the spaces and the scenarios with what they had. And it translated into a story that I believe that he told effectively. And, he didn't really go over the board with anything. There were some weird shots, which there may have been actually a cinematographer involved. But there were some weird shots that I was like, it's interesting. And some really quick cuts, especially at the beginning when they're talking about the fungus, when they're jumping from person to person very rapidly, and they bookend one of the scientists twice, and then it's just a weird cut through that scene. And I'm actually really curious about Mike's trivia about him saying that he doesn't know why Brooks was traveling through time. They put that in the movie. I have a lot of questions. That's all I'm trying to say there. So we'll go over to Coherence. James Ward Bright by Barkett. Why? Anyways, so he was a voice in Rango, which I thought was really fascinating to me. But he's directed a lot of shorts and a lot of TV series as well. Coherence is his last big thing that he actually directed. Again, I wouldn't say that there was anything over the top where I was like, oh wow, this he's going places with it. It was, adequately directed. It showed all the normal technical skills. There were some odd choices throughout. One of the things I noticed for the longest time while they were at the dinner table, I was like, why are there C-stands on the table? And then I realized, those are lamps. They had put 3 plugged in lamps on this dining room table.
Yes.
I thought the same thing because of the knobs on
the knobs. And
I was like, they made a mistake. There's a stand. There's a light stand in the shot, but no.
They kind of did make a mistake, though. I mean, like, because they put the lamps there because I'm guessing they needed more light. And they just didn't have any way of doing it. So they're like, you know what? Let's just throw these lamps on there. Like, it's weird. But I guess I would say that we've been talking a lot about the no real script and the dialogue and people just kind of being messy. I don't think that there's... Sometimes that can go well. Sometimes it can go very badly. I don't think this was as bad as everybody thinks. I really feel like it was more natural. However, I will say this. As a director, it has to be super difficult to direct a scene like that and make it make sense. Because you're trying to set up shots and you're trying to, I think Gabe said, move the story forward. And that would be very difficult when everyone's just kind of doing their own thing and you're not entirely sure what you're going to get, where you're going to get it, and be able to merge that all together, even with I think Mike called the mole in the group to help get them back on track. It would be very difficult to actually get out the scene that you actually wanted if you just kind of let people go. I know what they were going for because it felt very natural. Because again, get a group of friends together, put them all in a house. Not everyone is taking their time and just talking one after another. Everyone just kind of talks over it. It's just kind of chaos. And I think they delivered that well. So I have to give them a little bit of props to be able to at least make those scenes move somewhere, because I think it would be very difficult, especially with as much that they did. There was a lot of shots that I felt were really, really dark. I don't know if that was intentional or if it was just a ability of the cameras and the crew that they had. But there were just some moments that I was like, this is really dark. And it really just kind of takes you out. So those were some interesting choices. So yeah, that's my throwdown.
So just speaking to the darkness quick, Primer had a couple scenes where you can tell their equipment is really, really struggling with the darkness. It is super grainy and super, I don't know what the technical term is. You guys would know a lot more about that than I am, but it's
in the
almost, car. Well, not just the car, but also when they're out looking for a cat.
Yeah.
Like it pans down.
Scene.
Yeah, it starts in the night sky and it immediately looks like there's snow on the film. Like it's struggling so hard with the darkness. And that's just a technical limitation that they weren't. I mean, I think if it looks that bad, scrap the scene, change it, like do something else. Don't show that, because I think that is one of those moments that you're like, oh, I'm watching a movie and look how bad this looks, right? And that's, to me, the cardinal sin is if you make me realize I'm watching a movie, that's, you're off to a bad start. But again, you're talking super low budget, and then had they made Primer 10 years later, that wouldn't have been an issue. They would have had, tools and much more advanced cameras for much cheaper and things like that they would have been able to use. It's just one of those things that's kind of glaring in hindsight. I think I understand what you're saying about the realism of the sort of talking over each other. And it's something that kind of goes along with a genre of movie that I generally despise, and that's called mumblecore. They call it, like super hyper realistic verite, conversations. And I think the problem with those is if they're not done well. And I got to say, for its merits, Coherence is not as confusing as some of the other ones I've seen, or as bad at being clear and concise. They do manage to get pretty decent takes of most of the conversations, but sometimes it's very stilted and awkward because of the way they have the conversations. But the problem with it is there is a language to film, and it's a way to communicate with the audience to keep them engaged in the story, clued in on what's happening, moving the story along. Like it's a dance you're playing. And if you overly complicate that, or you make it hard to parse apart what's happening, or if it's confusing or poorly scripted or poorly edited or poorly cut, you're really just creating interference between what you're trying to do and what the audience gets. And in some cases, some of the dialogue talking over each other was just noise, and it became just distracting on what I was trying to pay attention to. Luckily, the movie is concise enough, I think, that you get the gist of it, even though that's the case sometimes. But it can be very distracting at times. Primer kind of has the opposite problem where, I mean, they will kind of interplay and talk to each other a lot, or talk over each other at points and answer each other back very quickly and things like that. But the dialogue is so stilted and sparse in places, and they're kind of standing around like, I speak, then you speak, then I speak, then you speak, like they're waiting for each other to get their lines out. And I think Abe in particular is very flat with his delivery. And, that's partially down to him not being an actor, but it's also directing, getting that emotion or something out of someone. But yeah, I think they both have flaws in their own way. But I think if Primer would have tried to have the same conversational style that Coherence would have had, it would have suffered much, much more. I think Coherence actually benefits a bit from its director and having the mole inside to keep things moving in the right direction, and probably very selective editing and sound work to untangle some of the mess it could have been.
You wonder if they shot with more than one camera to get multiple different, close audio on, these two people were kind of mumbling and these two people were mumbling.
For that.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind.
Stop there. I have to say I did not enjoy the directorial style of Coherence. I don't know, the camera angles and that kind of thing, the moving camera all the time, it really bothered me. It wasn't even, to me it was worse than even just like a documentary style type thing. It just was like random movement and out of focus, low light, and then the overlapping dialogue just did not work for me. I just really did not enjoy the directorial style of Coherence at all. I don't think it served the story necessarily. I think part of it is like, okay, well, there's a strange event happening, this inexplicable event happening, and what are people going to do in real life, and what is that going to be like? But I just didn't feel like it served. It didn't serve the story well in my mind, and I just did not enjoy it. I had a hard time watching because the camera just never stopped moving. Things were out of focus all the time. I couldn't understand what people were saying. Just didn't enjoy it. I thought that the direction of Primer was significantly better. Maybe we don't have really great acting performances, but the cinematography was better. Overall, I think Kyle brought up a few scenes where their equipment had some trouble with low light situations and that kind of thing. But I think overall the cinematography was better. The story, the shot choices were better. The editing was better. There were just a lot, in my opinion, a lot of better choices made there. And they made a confusing story slightly easier to understand. Coherence, I think, has in many ways kind of an ironic name because at times I didn't understand what was going on, which I think is the case for a lot of these types of movies, But I just really didn't understand what was going on, and I don't think the directorial choices aided in that effort to try to understand it. So I don't know. I just feel like there were some bad choices in Coherence. And, again, we have to be a little bit forgiving because of the low budgets. And I understand that. I am forgiving of that, but I just don't think it was as well done as Primer.
There was a lot of...
Okay.
But...
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that there was a lot of shots in Primer, too, that are out of focus or were weirdly framed or just in weird spots that you could tell they potentially zoomed in post, or it just didn't develop well, so they boosted the contrast on it. Like,
yeah, but it didn't feel like a stylistic choice. I feel like a lot of the stuff in Coherence was a stylistic choice. We're going to have the moving cameras, or it's going to be, I'm sure they didn't choose for it to be out of focus, but there was definitely a choice made in how they were going to film it, and it was going to be this pseudo documentary, cinema verite. This feels like real life kind of choice, and I didn't. In this case, I can get into that, but in this case, I didn't like it. Okay. I would leave that party and go to another house and kill myself so that I didn't have to watch that party in that. No, but no, really, I just felt like that was a stylistic choice, and it's not one that I personally enjoyed. It's a personal choice thing, but I didn't enjoy that choice. And a lot of it I think had to do with, again, the budget and the equipment available and the whole acting style and all that kind of thing. It's like, let's just run this. Okay, let's go. And I think with the improvisational kind of acting style too, that inhibits what you can do with the camera. Because at times you don't know exactly what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to be talking when and what's going to happen in the scene. So you got to kind of be like fluid with the camera. And sometimes that works. And sometimes
Mike has trivia on that. Mike has trivia on that.
Okay, I won't talk about it. I'm done.
We're at the round's over, so I'll just vote. I guess that's cool.
No, go ahead.
I haven't said anything.
Go.
I just want to talk real quick about the editing. Taking everything that you guys said about the directing, the fact that I would argue that Coherence is actually, considering how it was shot and how it was directed, the fact that there is a coherent story in there that does not get muddled up, and the fact that they shot it in 5 days. I said 3 weeks earlier, but they shot it in 5 days. I have to say, kudos to the editor for being able to put together a story like that and have it make sense. Because, we've seen movies all the time that the same level of complication, and it's just, there's no way to put it together in any kind of discernible way. I think, if I vote for Coherence on this round, it's going to be do the editing, and the editing on Primer was also exceptional, considering what they had to work with. But I think that you really have to hand it to Coherence for the editing. Okay, now we can end the round.
All right, Andrew.
Coherence.
Gabe.
Primer.
Kyle.
Yeah, Tom swayed me. I'm going to go with Coherence.
Oh. All right. And Tom.
Yeah, I got to give it to Coherence for the editing.
All right. Primer was shot for around $7,000. Shane Kurth stated that at most an 80-minute movie could be made from the footage. The film ended up being 78 minutes long. He stated that the shooting ratio was 2-1, which is crazy. Shane not only played the lead character, Aaron, but did the writing, directing, cinematography, editing, post-production, and even the soundtrack for the movie himself. He also mentioned in the trivia at one point, it took him 2 years to finish post-production on it. And he said that he quit multiple times. Like he just walked away. He's like, nope, it's never getting done. And that the reason that the editing took so long is because they only did one take for every shot. One take. That's it. There was only one time that they did a second take. And that was because someone had left a Sprite can on top of one of the props.
Bastards.
They shot on film too.
They did. Yep, 16 millimeter.
That makes a huge difference
that's
too.
Exactly.
That's crazy too. Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially most of the $7,000 went to film stock.
That makes
Dear-
sense.
Dear Lord.
Director of Coherence, James Ward Burkett, wanted to use his own house as the movie's setting. Since his wife was 8.5 months pregnant and wanted a home birth, she agreed to let him so long as he could do it in 5 days. The set only had 5 crew members, 2 sound guys, the director of photography, the director, and producer Lena Basager. 5 crew members, 2 sound guys. And it also stated that the reason that the camera is so shaky and kind of moves all the time is to allow them to quickly turn to whoever was going to deliver a line because they didn't know who was going to deliver it.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's what it felt like. You could tell that they didn't exactly know what was coming, so
Exactly.
the camera had to be
Yep.
kind of on a swivel.
Yep. It
There's a
was-
reason most movies aren't directed that way.
Correct. All right. Fourth and final round
Depends on the topic.
overall.
Geez. I don't know where to go exactly with overall on these. I think maybe a lot of times we talk about things that get missed in some of the other categories like music and that kind of thing. I'm not sure necessarily, maybe you guys would disagree. I'm not sure that there's any music that really stands out to me in these. But I think maybe what we could do is talk about kind of the overall concept of these and the kind of approach to these situations. It's weird because I had seen Primer before, so I knew kind of what it was about. I knew it was a time travel movie and that kind of thing. I had never seen Coherence, but my assumption was that it was time travel. But it's not really time travel. It's more of a kind of a multiverse kind of thing. And so I think maybe we can discuss a little bit about like the approach to each of these topics that these films take and how they kind of approach and unravel the conundrums that come along with these concepts. Like for instance, if you travel back in time, what does that mean? Are there 2 versions of you at any given time? And if you travel back in time more than once, how many versions of you are there at any given time? And what's the implication of, interacting with a previous version of yourself? And how, what does that mean? And then the multiverse thing too is it's like, well, how do these different universes with different timelines and different, outcomes, how do they overlap? How do you cross over them? And I think it's interesting how they kind of like approached each of these kind of complicated concepts. So I'd like to, I don't know, I'd like to hear what you guys have to think about, either the time travel or the multiverse concepts and how each of these movies kind of approach them.
I thought
Go ahead.
I thought they did I'm trying just to get in so I don't get cut off.
No, go for it.
I thought they were both handled pretty well. I do think we're hitting a point where I think there's a level of complication that would just, these skirt pretty close to pushing me over the edge where, most of the time I don't want movies to be this much work, and time travel movies are theoretical and they're supposed to be fun and entertaining, and the best ones like About Time and Back to the Future are they keep it really simple so that you can focus on the story. I don't know. Like I said, I think the 2 of these handle it pretty fun, and it's kind of they're fun thought experiments. Let's just call them that. And and I spent a lot of today thinking about these 2 movies and everything else. But I think just they could just get too complicated to be worth watching.
Yeah, in a way they can become impenetrable that way. It's like, Andrew sent a video earlier of a woman kind of analyzing Primer, right? And literally the analysis of it is almost 1/3 as long as the movie itself. And it's like, maybe there's some joy in that. I think Tom mentioned it earlier, rewatching these movies. Some of my favorite movies I enjoyed the very first time through, but have like seen additional things I didn't catch the first time. And they have enhanced my viewing experience on subsequent views. But Tom was saying that like these movies, you almost don't even understand or get the first time through, and you almost have to watch them twice or three times in order to just understand them. And then, do you need to take notes? Like, which version of M are we looking at? Which version of this character are we looking at? How many versions are there? What universe are they in? It almost becomes, kind of a burden to watch. And I think there's a fine balance there of making something kind of interesting and but also not overly complicated so that you give up on it.
So I think there's a challenge to that, and a movie I'm going to use to explain that a bit is a movie I love called Memento. When you watch
Memento's freaking awesome.
It's very
talk about editing.
It's very confusing, but it's so well told, and it's an intriguing mystery that you want to figure out, and you're along for the ride on, and that helps a lot. So if you watch a movie and it feels like a chore, and you're like, I don't understand this, and I'm not going to understand this, I'm going to have to start it over or watch it again, then unless you're someone who's really interested in the subject matter, or you really like puzzles, like that, it may not be a good sign for your movie. Not saying that it can't be, but if you watch a movie the first time and go, I don't know what I got out of that, I don't know if I understood any of that, I could be totally wrong about all that, that could be a sign that you've done something wrong, or you've missed the point. But a lot of movies don't hold people's hands, and I like that generally. But there's a fine line. Like, I feel like if you're going to do a mystery movie or something like that, right? I think one of the most unsatisfying things is to learn that you never could have solved the mystery. You never had enough information or anything like that until the very, very end. They held all that back from you. That's always very frustrating to feel like you really had no shot at it. And I think Primer falls into that sometimes, where you're like, I really don't know if I can get this the first time through, or someone's going to have to explain this to me. Coherence, I think, is a little simpler because they do more explaining during the movie. I think actually both of these would work better as books or TV shows, perhaps, where you could sit and take more time with them or be more descriptive with them, because rushing them into 80 or 90 minutes can be a bit disorienting. But I don't think there's too much more you could have done with Primer to stretch it. I think you wrang, every detail out of it you could. Anything you added to it would just be explaining the film, and it doesn't seem like that's what the director wants to do. He wants to do the opposite. And that, of course, is his choice, and we all will either enjoy that or not enjoy that, or think that's brave or dumb or whatever, right? However we feel. But yeah, making your movie too difficult can feel inaccessible, which is usually not good for a movie. And it can also make it seem like it's very pretentious, where you're like, oh, well, not everyone's going to understand my movie. Well, but if nobody has a chance to understand your movie, then you're doing a bad job telling the story. And I don't think Primer goes that far, but it's very, very close to it in points.
Right. One thing I think of that kind of falls into that category that you were talking about, Kyle, is Westworld on HBO. The first season is really, fantastic. I think the first season of Westworld is fantastic, and it's you can kind of understand it, but subsequent seasons become more and more kind of cerebral and conceptual, and you're like, what's going on here, and why do I care? And at some point you lose the viewer. It's like it's too much. I'm another one of the things that I thought about when I was watching these is, like, last month's episode we watched No Country for Old Men, and one of my favorite things about No Country for Old Men is that it's a lot of show don't tell, And when there is dialogue, it's very meaningful dialogue that doesn't explain what you're seeing, but enhances what you're seeing. And I felt like with Coherence, it was the opposite. It was all dialogue. I wasn't seeing very much of anything except people sitting around a dinner table, and it was all dialogue that didn't really mean anything to me.
Well, and it's being delivered by a cast who really doesn't know kind of entirely what's going on.
Right.
That's
They're
not
not Javier Bardem and the like. So it was. I just felt like Coherence was the opposite in a way of how I felt about No Country for Old Men. Obviously very, very different kind of stories and concepts, but just the dialogue and all that kind of stuff, just the way it was handled was very different to me.
Something I thought about is that these movies could probably benefit by taking a lesson from each other. If Coherence was a little more show don't tell like Primer is, that could benefit it. And if Primer had a little bit more help cluing you into what was going on, it might benefit it as well. So these may be two movies that diverged.
I see what you did there.
Right. They split a little too. They went a little too far down their lanes, and some of that, seeing as Coherence came later, I wonder, did Coherence learn from Primer and the feedback we got? Because for a long time, the word about Primer is how difficult it is to understand. Did the guy who wrote and directed Coherence go, wait, I don't want this problem with my film, so I'm going to have the roulette wheel explanation. I'm going to have this explanation. We're going to pull a book out of this. We're going to do, to help the audience along. But I think if you took these two movies and took pieces of both of them or aspects of both of them, you'd end up with better films.
Yeah, definitely could be. One of the things I didn't like about Coherence was the glow sticks. I just felt like they were a weird. I don't know why. I just felt like it was weird. Like, who has glow sticks around, and why do we have all different colors in each universe? And that didn't make a lot of sense to me. But one thing I did like about that was the physical differences between the characters. So the one character, he had a Band-Aid, and they were two different types of Band-Aids, and I think you could have really played with that a little bit more in Coherence, in that there could have been physical differences between them. This guy, I don't know, just off the cuff, he could have torn his shirt or something, but then when he comes back from his trip, his shirt is not torn, or whatever it might be. You could have played around with more like kind of physical differences there that weren't literally glaringly in your face, to show the differences between these people. And I also, like I said before, I think it could have made you feel a little bit more uncomfortable. It's like, who are you? Which version of you am I talking to right now? And you could have also, played up a little bit of like knowledge, because my assumption is that if you're in one universe or another, like if you say one thing to somebody in one universe, maybe you don't say that to them in the other universe, and they don't remember that, and so they come back and they don't remember what you told them. So then do they have a bad memory, or are they a different version of it?
Yeah, they do flirt with that a bit at times. I think one of the things that I'll give Coherence some props for was, I don't know if you guys felt this way, but there's a shift in the movie where at first you think there are two different houses, and then the slow realization that there are more than two houses and that there may be an infinite number of houses,
right,
became like, I thought that was very well handled. Because,
but how do you explain? It's interesting to me, but how do you explain like they're different houses? Why is this party happening in multiple different houses that seem to be in the same neighborhood?
Have you driven through? Have you driven through parts of West Des Moines? Like,
I live in Waukee, so yeah. I
oh
know,
yeah, you've
I know
got that. You got the every house looks the same kind of thing. Yeah.
Kinda.
So I think the divergence and the causality and all that problems with the decoherence start at a specific point, right? And at that specific point, all of those people were together in that house in X amount of universes, like a majority of the universes or whatever. And that's where the timeline starts to split after everyone's at the party except for Amir and Lori. And then, so then you're limited to like, okay, these 8 characters or whatever are in every scenario. Now, there could be a scenario out there where someone got in a car accident on the way there, or, there was a medical emergency. We never see those other ones because all the other universes are behaving similarly to the one that we're in. And I think that's down to budget and not causing extra confusion, right? So I think that if you wanted to play with those things more, you're tipping over into that area where you're getting too complex. Just like when you talk about the glow sticks, they are a very convenient contrivance for us to identify people from different universes. So's the box, so's the dice, so the pictures, etc. But there has to be some touchstone for us, because if there's not, everyone who walks in the house, we have no idea if they're new, old, universe left, universe right, up, down. And so that can add to the tension, but it'll also be drastically confusing. Whereas in the movie, they do have reveals of, I'm in the wrong house. We somehow went to the wrong place. This is not my wife. These are not my friends, etc. And I think that's a lot of the emotional stakes of the movie, is realizing that when this comet's done, you're stuck wherever you are. And that's one of the driving forces of M finding this, if you want to call it, house or universe where she can be happy. Right, she's trying to find the happiest version.
Right,
and they also, I mean, to some of these points, like there's a whole conversation about our discount Matthew Perry being in Roswell, and she has no concept. She's like, I love that show, and doesn't remember him in any of the episodes, and he was in every single episode.
Right,
and they have cell phones where some of them are broken and other ones they aren't broken.
Right.
So they have a lot of those type of things, and they even start showing how that different things have happened at different times, because when at the very end, before M starts wandering off, she actually opens the door and the note is on the door, which is way later because we've already seen that happen twice. And so I think what I really enjoyed about Coherence is that it is, I mean, all of these obviously are theoretical, but, the idea of multiple universes and the fact that every decision can spawn a separate timeline, and this whole torn space-time from this comet that brings all of these timelines together and actually like makes them collide, which is where the coherence happens, because that's the whole point, is that we have this mystical physics around us that does the decoherence, which keeps everything separate. We watch lots of different like movies where we have multiverses. The MCU is really popular with multiverses right now, and talking about the break in space-time continuum. Interstellar does this. Interstellar does it in a very confusing way, but it does something very similar. So,
that's more a relativity thing. Yeah.
When they're actually going through like the book and they're talking about all of like where this is based on, I mean, this is a real theory, and to me, that's where I think I enjoyed that part of it, was that they're actually basing this problem off of something that is actually a theoretic, like a real theory that people are trying to prove, in the sense of Schrodinger's box. And so I feel like they pulled that together well and told a story where, again, at the end, you finally realize that, you were looking at this house, which They're not actually going to other houses. They think they are, but they're really not. They're just going back to the exact same house. It's just a different version of that house. And what is so amazing is at the end, you think only a couple of people that are standing in that party right now don't belong. And in all reality, you finally realize that there's only 2 people that belong there. Everyone else is wrong. And I think that it shows that they have all been shuffled and no one even realized it. And the glow stick thing is like that was just your early indicators that things were starting to happen. But that was, once they got past all that, it's not like at the end they were like, oh, mine's red, I've got a yellow one. like that was, I thought that was a good way, like at the very end, that aha moment of none of these people, they've all been shuffled. And they don't even realize that they've been shuffled. And that's what's so cool about it.
Right. It kind of makes me think of an Andy Samberg skit on Saturday Night Live where he has to decide who to shoot. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen it?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know which one to shoot. Well,
and they look completely different.
Yeah, they look.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes me think of that because it's like they're for some reason they're out to like they're out to kill their other selves. The one character is very clear about it. He's like, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to kill that. I'm going to kill me before he kills. Me. Yeah, before he kills me. And then at the end, M basically does the same thing. I mean, she stops short of actually killing her, and that's obviously the twist at the end. But that's what I think about. It's like, well, how do you know which one to kill? Who's going to kill who and which one do you kill? Which one do I shoot? I don't know. Why do you have to shoot any of us?
But it wouldn't matter, right?
Would it? I don't know. I mean, the implication is that it does matter because when M goes into that universe where everything looks happy and perfect, mm-hmm. She wants to get rid of the other version of herself so she can inhabit that world. Yep. That universe. So it does matter. It does. It seems like it does matter. She has to take her place.
But what I'm saying is it doesn't matter if you kill one version of yourself. If I go kill another Andrew from a different universe, it doesn't matter because there are infinite number of Andrews out there. So it's irrelevant that I would kill one because by the time I got back to the house, there would be a completely different one.
Oh, God, I'm so glad you said that because I've got like 6 here now. So,
oh, my God. Yeah, how many Toms are there?
Are we about to start this episode?
But apparently it doesn't matter.
Too many Toms.
That's what I'm saying. And like that whole thing at the end was, I think Kyle said it was when the comet was over, the actual convergence breaks and we go back to, or the coherence breaks and we go back to decoherence and everyone is in their same, and you're stuck where you are, even if it wasn't your original universe.
But that also implies that there's 2 M's in that one universe.
There now because implies there are 2 in the one universe, correct?
Which would also imply that one is mysteriously gone in another
correct.
Universe.
That would also imply that.
Yeah. So what do you do with two M's in one universe?
You make a candy.
Threesome.
That's. I mean, that's. I like and it. That's kind of what she did, right? She was like, I'm gonna kill the other one so I can take their place, even though I don't belong here.
Right, but she wasn't quite forceful enough in her murderous intent, and didn't really succeed.
Speaking of murderous intent, let's put this to a vote.
Yeah, we've gone well over.
Kill it with fire.
Gabe.
Primer.
Kyle.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're hearing this was our best one.
You said that last time.
Oh, shit.
And the time before that.
There's an optimistic Kyle in every universe? I don't believe that.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
I don't believe that.
Someone's got a sugarcoat.
You know what? Primer makes me mad, so I'm voting for Coherence.
Wow.
Primer makes you mad?
It does.
Tom.
Okay. It's very up its own butt.
Tom.
I will go with Primer, regardless of where it's located.
And Andrew.
I had to use a whiteboard and watch it multiple times, so Primer was just too confusing. So at the first time, so I'm going with Coherence.
All right. Well, I do love Primer. And I think I'm more in love with the fact that it was very low budget and that the dude did it all himself. And I've watched it at least, I think this was my third time watching it. And I agree. I'm probably not the smartest person to be watching it, but I believe I do understand it. I want to watch that video that Andrew sent. But it intrigues me a lot. And I did enjoy Coherence, and I understand what you guys were saying about the talking over each other, which does happen in real life. But there are directors out there that can do that and do it really well. And of course,
they can,
all these people are improvising.
I would agree. They do that a lot.
Yeah, it happens in real life too.
It does all the time.
Some on podcasts sometimes.
Sometimes we talk over each other.
What?
Yeah.
This podcast? What are you talking about?
Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
What?
I was just going to say Spielberg is always really good at doing those types of scenes. Of course, that's all scripted. That's all planned out. So yeah, that did bother me as well. I did enjoy watching both of these movies. I enjoyed watching Coherence for the first time and watching Primer for the third time. And some trivia for the overall. Some scenes in Coherent were reshot 6 months later. Lorraine Scafia Lee changed her hair during this time, so they spent $8,000 getting a wig that matched her original hair. This was as much of the budget as the entire first shoot.
What?
Yeah.
Why does it cost $8,000 for
taking a nap?
Jesus Christ. Ryan Johnson, director of Looper, mentions in the director's commentary that not only is Primer the best time travel movie ever made, but that when he sent the script for Looper to his friend, Shane Kurth told him all his time travel was wrong. I love that. All right.
One of the things, just really quick, one of the things I really liked about Primer too, it was a low budget movie, but I also really liked how the equipment looked low budget.
Yes.
Like these guys didn't have a budget for this, and they just put together stuff from,
around the house or Goodwill.
Yeah, from around the house or Walmart or whatever. And I really enjoyed that part of it.
Yep.
Something we have all done.
Exactly. All right. While I tally the votes, let's move on to recommendations. And Kyle, you are first.
Oh, no. Okay. I am going to give the easiest slam dunk recommendation, and it's going to seem like such a no-brainer, but I'm doing it because it's a movie I've never seen, and I'm watching it because there is a long time gap between it and the sequel that is now coming out, and that is Beetlejuice. I have never seen Beetlejuice before, so I took it upon myself. The first one. I had never seen it because I was of the age where when they would have showed that trailer where from behind him you see his face explode and like bats and claws and shit come out, that would have been enough for me to go, nope, not watching that movie. I will shit my pants or I'll never sleep again. I will give you a hint.
He was 20.
Yes, I was 20 when that trailer came out. I'm not that old, Mike. Let me give you an idea of what a scaredy cat I was as a child.
That might have been.
I watched the Growing Pains Halloween special where they were all turned into zombies, and my mother had to physically walk me from the living room to my bedroom. And if you'd ever been in my old house, you know that is literally around the corner. So I would never have watched Beetlejuice as a child, but I watched it as an adult, and it was hilarious. Michael Keaton is barely in that movie, and he steals it. He's great. I think Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis are absolutely charming. They are really good in that movie. Catherine O'Hara, who I obviously know is very funny, her performance during the Banana Boat song was incredible. It was so good. she really has some like move to her. And Winona Ryder was only 17 and she was great in Beetlejuice. So I am proud to say I have overcome my fears and now I've seen Beetlejuice. I didn't wet the bed the first week after I saw it. The second week I did, but I was unrelated. So now I can see Beetlejuice, and you should see the original Beetlejuice. And now I've said his name 3 times, and oh my God.
Oh my God. By the way, I was 18.
He is actually in that movie for 18 minutes.
Yep, and he's amazing. I watched that last night.
Yep. And he's amazing.
Yeah, he's.
Well, I'm glad you overcame your fears, Kyle.
It's slowly but surely.
Yep.
My therapist says I have to face them sometime. She did call me a coward to my face.
All right, so this is our 5th time loop bout. Like, not the time we've done it, but we've done 5 bouts that have time loops in, and this is our 5th one. My recommendation, I think, is going to come up eventually because it is a really well done time loop movie from 2020. It stars Andy Samberg and it's Palm Springs, and it's about this slacker who is stuck in a time loop on a wedding weekend in Palm Springs. And he meets this girl, and the two of them get kind of sucked into this horrible, nightmarish weekend with her insufferable family. J.K. Simmons is in it. Peter Gallagher. It's really funny and it's really well done. And I actually thought there was a part of me that thought the script may get a best adapted screenplay nomination. It was so good. It was in the running on the odds boards, but obviously didn't make it. But check out Palm Springs. I think it's on Hulu. You can watch it for free if you got Hulu. So check it out.
All right. Thanks, Tom. I believe I've seen a clip from that where he's walking through the dance and he's making eye contact with her and he's just going like to person to couple and doing these crazy. It's hilarious. That was a good story.
Really funny. He's great. So that's my second Andy Samberg recommendation in a row. So
wow.
We'll see if I can keep it going.
The second time we mentioned him during this episode.
And I know you started talking about him. Like, don't say Palm Springs.
Oh no.
Andrew.
Honestly, Tom, I haven't seen it yet. So
it's fantastic. It's really well done.
I have a recommendation, but one thing that time travel stuff that came up was I didn't know that Taika Waititi.
One thing to learn about the fact that we've done this 5 times, we get dumber every time, and we can't speak.
I'd like to recommend Palm Springs.
he is doing a Time Bandit series, and it looks fantastic from the trailers. That? Yes, and it looks so good
original.
From the trailers.
I love the original movie.
So mine is also a lower budget time travel movie. It is called Time Lapse, and it is about a bunch of friends that find a camera that will take a picture that is 24 hours into the future. And so then they start using it for, gains on their way, lottery tickets and things like that. And of course, things start to unravel because people are using it and they shouldn't be. And then, it just kind of all unravels. But it's a good action, goofy time travel movie, good popcorn movie to sit down and just be like, yep. It's simple too. So Time Lapse.
All right. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay.
Gabe.
Well, I'm going to recommend
Thanks, Gabe.
a movie. Yeah, you're welcome. Next time we do this, I'll actually get my recommendation out.
He said, "Thanks, Gabe."
What?
Done.
All right.
Read the room, Gabe.
All right. Good night. Good night.
Hi, Tom number 12 here.
Jeez. Okay. Let's try this again. Can you do like a time travel sound, Mike?
You're really recommending Time Cop 3 again?
Again. No, this time I'm going to recommend a movie called Time Crimes, which is a Spanish film from 2007, where a guy goes into the woods and gets attacked by someone and runs away and ends up at this lab that just happens to be an experimental time machine, and things get kind of crazy from there. And it's one of those things where there, the whole conundrum of multiple versions of yourself at the same time starts to kind of unravel. And it's a really well done film. And sometimes I have a hard time with subtitled films, but this I really enjoyed enough that the subtitles didn't distract or bother me. And I think it's a really kind of creative film, and it has a really interesting ending, and it's really well shot, beautiful cinematography, and well edited. In that, things that happen in one timeline you don't understand, and then it comes back. It gets explained later, like why this happened in this timeline, and it's really quite an interesting film. I wouldn't call it a low budgeter, but maybe, I guess in today's terms, it was about $3 million for the budget. So, but in today's terms, I guess that's a low budgeter. But it's Time Crimes, a Spanish film from 2007.
All right, thank you, Gabe. Real quick, mine is from 2003, and I watched it at a free sneak preview. It's about they're stranded at a desolate Nevada motel during a nasty rainstorm. 10 strangers become acquainted with each other when they realize that they're being killed off one by one. And it's kind of it's a psychological thriller, and guess what? There is a twist at the end, and I have to say I really do enjoy this movie. It's directed by James Mangold and stars John Cusack, Ray Liotta, Amanda Peet, and I mean there are a bunch of familiar faces in this film. It is Identity.
Great recommendation.
I really do like that movie.
It's really good.
And both of these films, I mean, I know that, it's not dealing with time travel or multiple universes, but it does kind of remind me of both of these films.
Fantastic recommendation. Yeah.
All right. We're going to poke the monkey, find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner, by decision, is Primer!
All right. Primer won 9-7. So very close.
So close.
I was really hoping that I wasn't going to have to be the tiebreaker on that one.
Hey, so when I convinced Kyle during directing to jump over to Primer, no, I convinced him to go to Coherence.
Yeah,
yes, yep.
Oh, never mind. So I just made it closer.
Yep.
Never mind.
I think the last time though you did that and we tied, so now we finally got a winner.
After you do a show 12 times, you start to figure out where people are related.
Please.
I have notes here that says Kyle is flexible on directing. So,
do you remember the time
and
every
also
round?
Sexually.
Oh,
Gabe,
you got to feel my hamstrings, my friend. I am not flexible. Missionary or nothing.
I wasn't talking physically.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
It's 2024. Whatever I see down there, I go down on. It's fine.
very, very progressive of you.
I'm a liberal.
Please leave us a review on whatever podcasting service you use. It helps us reach new listeners. If you like us, tell your friends. If you hate us, tell your enemies. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. If you want to listen to an unedited version of the show, you can catch us live on Twitch whenever we record an episode. In October, we're going out for pizza, games, and animatronic abominations as Five Nights at Freddy's takes on Willy's Wonderland. When I wrote that, I forgot the S. For Kyle, Gabe, Andrew, Tom, and myself, thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
boy. I'm ready for number 13. I'm ready for number 13. You guys ready?
Yeah, I could improve that.
No, you really can't.
Thanks, Tom.
It's been trending downwards, Gabe.
I think the next episode, Tom is not on it for, he had an accident.
Yeah, sorry about
that. Accident?
It's about time for an accident.
It's about time for an accident.
Well, we're going to have to call the time cops.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So, while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta holiday market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.